Broadcasting from Lothlorien, Middle-earth, this is the Secret Fire Podcast, sent to burn at the heart of the world, episode number 40. I'm Michael.
And I'm Micah.
On this episode, Gimli and the Tent of Galadriel. Who can dwell in the house of the Lord? Gimli. Gimli can. Let's find out why. We invite you to come along, join the fellowship, become a servant of the Secret Fire right here on the GCT network.
This is your Great Commission transmission.
Micah, we did it. We said that we would be back in 2 weeks, and it's exactly 2 weeks.
It's almost like some kind of trick or something.
Oh, or like a new habit, perhaps. Perhaps.
Well, let's hope.
Yes, let us hope. We are going to go ahead and jump right into the content here real quick for our new listeners that nobody wants to tune into a new show that they've never heard and listen to people gabbing at the very beginning. So we'll save our gabbing, and boy, do we have some gabbing to do after the main body of this episode.
All right.
Micah, last time we left off in a flet.
Yes.
In a talon. What was that all about? What is a flet?
It's like a tree house.
Hey, it really is. It's like a platform up in a tree where we encountered Haldir and two other elves that had been watching the company ever since they even approached the borders of Lothlorien, right? And so we're going to back up just a little bit to get a running start and refresh our memory. When Frodo came at last up onto the flet, he found Legolas seated with three other elves. They were clad in shadowy gray and could not be seen among the tree stems unless they moved suddenly. They stood up, and one of them uncovered a small lamp that gave out a slender silver beam. He held it up, looking at Frodo's face and Sam's. Then he shut off the light again and spoke words of welcome in his elven tongue. Frodo spoke haltingly in return. "Welcome," the elf then said again in the common language, speaking slowly. "We seldom use any tongue but our own, for we dwell now in the heart of the forest and do not willingly have dealings with any other folk. Even our own kindred in the north are sundered from us. But there are some of us still who go abroad for the gathering of news and the watching of our enemies, and they speak the languages of other lands. I am one. Haldir is my name. My brothers, Rumel and Orofin, speak little of your tongue. But we have heard rumors of your coming, for the messengers of Elrond passed by Lorien on their way home up the Dimril Stair. We had not heard of hobbits, of halflings, for many a long year, and did not know that any yet dwelt in Middle-earth. You do not look evil, and since you come with an elf of our kindred, we are willing to befriend you as Elrond asked, though it is not our custom to lead strangers through our land. But you must stay here tonight. How many are you?" 8, said Legolas. "Myself, 4 hobbits, and 2 men, one of whom, Aragorn, is an elf friend of the folk of Westerness." "The name of Aragorn, son of Arathorn, is known in Lorien," said Haldir, "and he has the favor of the lady. All then is well, but you have yet spoken only of 7. "The 8th is a dwarf," said Legolas. "A dwarf?" said Haldir. "That is not well. We have not had dwellings with the dwarves since the dark days. They are not permitted in our land. I cannot allow him to pass." "But he is from the Lonely Mountain, one of Dane's trusty people, and friendly to Elrond," said Frodo. "Elrond himself chose him to be one of our companions, and he has been brave and faithful." The elves spoke together in soft voices and questioned Legolas in their own tongue. "Very good," said Haldir at last. "We will do this, though it is against our liking. If Aragorn and Legolas will guard him and answer for him, he shall pass, but he must go blindfold through Lothlorien. But now we must debate no longer. Your folk must not remain on the ground. We have been keeping watch on the rivers ever since we saw a great troop of orcs going north towards Moria along the skirts of the mountains many days ago. Wolves are howling on the wood's border. If you have indeed come from Moria, the peril cannot be far behind. Tomorrow early, you must go on. The 4 hobbits shall climb up here and stay with us. We do not fear them. There is another Talon in the next tree. There the others must take refuge. You, Legolas, must answer to us for them. Call us if anything is amiss, and have an eye on that dwarf. That's where we left off, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, some drama is building here.
Mm-hmm.
What is this drama?
So, well, if I'm permitted to use the term racial drama.
Hey, it is. It is. It's drama between the firstborn of Iluvatar and his adopted children, which are the dwarves. Remember, Iluvatar's children are the firstborn and those that come after.
And I'm sorry, I love that term, the adopted children.
Yes.
'Cause it's beautiful to me.
It is. It really is. And there's a great picture of God and Christ in that, but that will have to wait until one day we get to the Silmarillion, right? Okay, so as we have this tension building, this drama building up, are you ready? Are you ready, Micah, to carry on?
I sure am.
Remember what Bilbo used to say? It's a dangerous business, Frodo.
Going out your door, you step onto the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swept off to.
Legolas at once went down the ladder to take Haldir's message, and soon afterwards Merry and Pippin clambered up onto the high flet. They were out of breath and seemed rather scared. "There," said Merry, panting. "We have lugged up your blankets as well as our own. Strider has hidden all the rest of our baggage in a deep drift of leaves." "You had no need of your burdens," said Haldir. "It is cold in the treetops in winter, though the wind tonight is in the south. But we have food and drink to give you that will drive away the night chill, and we have skins and cloaks to prepare. Food and drink to drive away the night chill." That kind of reminds me of our discussion last episode with the living waters that Jesus stood up on the last day, the great day of the Feast of Booths, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of Sukkot. Said, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come unto me." So that actually ties into the magic of the river Nimrodel, or stream, really is what it is, right? Okay. The hobbits accepted this second and far better supper very gladly. Then they wrapped themselves warmly, not only in the fur cloaks of the elves, but in their own blankets as well, and tried to go to sleep. But weary as they were, only Sam found that easy to do. Hobbits do not like heights, and do not sleep upstairs even when they have any stairs. The flat was not at all to their liking as a bedroom. It had no walls, not even a rail. Hey!
A reoccurring theme, it would seem.
Yes. For newer listeners, Micah and I, whenever we're watching the Lord of the Rings movies or the Hobbit movies, and they come to some kind of a bridge, we say Middle Earth needs more handrails.
It's an alternate reality where just nobody thought of rails.
Unneeded. Alrighty. It had no walls, not even rails. Only on one side there was a light-plated screen which could be moved and fixed in different places according to the wind. I like that. That reminds me a lot of Forichel in Lord of the Rings Online.
You're right, it does.
Yes.
I never thought of that.
And so these screens that can be moved wherever the wind is blowing to keep that chill off of you. Pippin went on talking for a while. "I hope if I do go to sleep on this bird loft that I shan't roll off," he said. "Once I do get to sleep," said Sam, "I shall go on sleeping whether I roll off or no. And the less said, the sooner I'll drop off, if you take my meaning." Frodo lay for some time awake and looked up at the stars glinting through the pale roof of quivering leaves. Sam was snoring at his side long before he himself closed his eyes. He could dimly see the gray forms of 2 elves sitting motionless with their arms about their knees, speaking in whispers. The other had gone down to take up his watch on one of the lower branches. At last, lulled by the wind in the boughs above and the sweet murmur of the falls of Nimrodel below, Frodo fell asleep, with the song of Legolas running in his mind. Micah, where are you in Lotro right now?
I'm on a Talon, or Talon, however you want to call it, pronounce it. A flat, yeah, there you go, called Talon Haldir, which I don't know if somewhere in the book it's mentioned that that's the name of this specific Talon, but
I think that they did that just to identify it in Lord of the Rings Online.
So I'm up there, and actually, when you mentioned the screens, I had never paid that much attention, but I was like, oh, I wonder if they have them in Lotro. I turn around, there's a screen right there. I'd never noticed it
and
before.
Lo, there was a screen.
It's amazing what you discover when you follow along with it.
Yes, and that is when we're coming down from the gates of Moria, and we're going down that path. That's where you veer off to the right and go up the tree.
Yeah,
and
when you
Haldir's
first
up
enter
there.
the eaves. Yeah,
Right. Fantastic stuff. Late in the night, he woke. The other hobbits were asleep. The elves were gone. The sickle moon was gleaming dimly among the leaves. The wind was still. A little way off, he heard a harsh laugh and the tread of many feet on the ground below. There was a ring of metal. The sound died slowly away and seemed to go southward on into the wood. A head appeared suddenly through the hole in the flet. Frodo sat up in alarm and saw that it was a gray-hooded elf. He looked towards the hobbits. "What is it?" said Frodo. "Shh," said the elf in a hissing whisper, and cast onto the flet a rope ladder rolled up. "Orcs," said Frodo. "What are they doing?" But the elf had gone. There were no more sounds. Even the leaves were silent, and the very falls seemed to be hushed. Frodo sat up and shivered in his wraps. He was thankful that they had not been caught on the ground, but he felt that the trees offered little protection except concealment. Orcs were as keen as hounds on a scent, it was said, but they could also climb. He drew out Sting. It flashed and glittered like a blue flame, and then slowly faded again and grew dull. In spite of the fading of his sword, the feeling of immediate danger did not leave Frodo. Rather, it grew stronger. He got up and crawled to the opening and peered down. He was almost certain that he could hear stealthy movements at the tree's foot far below. Not elves, for the woodland folk were altogether noiseless in their movements. Then he heard faintly a sound like sniffing, and something seemed to be scrabbling on the bark of the tree trunk. He stared down into the dark, holding his breath. Something was now climbing slowly, and its breath came like a soft hissing through closed teeth. Then, coming up, close to the stem, Frodo saw 2 pale eyes. They stopped and gazed upward, unwinking. Suddenly, they turned away, and a shadowy figure slipped around the trunk of the tree and vanished. Immediately afterwards, Haldir came climbing swiftly up through the branches. "There was something in this tree that I have never seen before," he said. "It was not an orc. It fled as soon as I touched the tree stem. It seemed to be wary, and to have some skill in trees, or I might have thought that it was one of you hobbits." Remember, Micah, back episode number 1 when we were going through concerning hobbits?
Yeah.
And we talked a little bit about the 3 types of hobbits that there are. There are the Harfoots, which what we're most familiar with, the Fallowhides, and the Stores. And the Stores were really sundered, for the most part, from the other 2 hobbit groups. and they were very different, even though they were hobbits. They liked water, and apparently I could go so far as to surmise that they like climbing trees as well. Whereas we've seen that Merry and Pippin and Sam and none of them want to be in this tree.
They don't want to go up and they don't want to go down.
They wish that they had never encountered this tree.
Yeah.
Is basically what it comes down to. And we know that we know who this is talking about, especially when Haldir says, "Or I might have thought that it was one of you hobbits." Well, this creature was a hobbit long, long, long ago, before being completely corrupted by this ring, right? We'll learn more about that later on, but I wanted to point that out, how different the race of Stors are.
Mm-hmm.
I did not shoot, for I dared not arouse any cries. We cannot risk battle. A strong company of orcs has passed. They crossed the Nimrodel, cursed their foul feet in its clean water, and went on down the old road beside the river. They seemed to pick up some scent, and they searched the ground for a while near the place where you halted. The three of us could not challenge 100, so we went ahead and spoke with feigned voices, leading them on into the wood. Orphan has now gone in haste back to our dwellings to warn our people. None of the orcs will ever return out of Lorien. Wow. And there will be many elves hidden on the northern border before another night falls. But you must take the road south as soon as it is fully light. Day came pale from the east. As the light grew, it filtered through the yellow leaves of the Malorn, and it seemed to the hobbits that the early sun of a cool summer's morning was shining. Pale blue sky peeped among the moving branches. Looking through an opening in the south side of the Flet, Frodo saw all the valley of the Silverlode, lying like a sea of fallow gold, tossing gently in the breeze. This goes along with that description that we were talking about, what it looks like in Lord of the Rings Online.
Yeah.
Just gold.
Yeah.
As far as the eye can see. There's gold in them thar. Anyway, okay. Let's see here. Whoops. Oh, don't turn page. Okay. The morning was still young and cold when the company set out again, guided now by Haldir and his brother Rumel. "Farewell, sweet Nimrodel," cried Legolas. Frodo looked back and caught a gleam of white foam among the gray tree stems. "Farewell," he said. It seemed to him that he would never hear again a running water so beautiful, forever blending its innumerable notes in an endless, changeful music. That's poetry right there.
Well, that's what Tolkien does best.
Oh my goodness. They went back to the path that still went on along the west side of the Silverlode, and for some way they followed it southward. There were the prints of orc feet in the earth, but soon Haldir turned aside into the trees and halted on the bank of the river under their shadows. "There is one of my people yonder across the stream," he said, "though you may not see him." He gave a call like the low whistle of a bird, and out of the thicket of young trees an elf stepped, clad in gray, but with his hood thrown back. His hair glinted like gold in the morning sun. Haldir skillfully cast over the stream a coil of gray rope, and he caught it and bound the end about a tree near the bank. "Celebrant is already a strong stream here, as you can see," said Haldir, "and it runs both swift and deep, and is very cold. We do not set foot in it so far north unless we must. But in these days of watchfulness, we do not make bridges. This is how we cross. Follow me." He made his end of the rope fast about another tree, and then ran lightly along it, over the river and back again as if he were on a road. "I can walk this path," said Legolas, "but the others have not this skill. Must they swim?" "No," said Haldir. "We have 2 more ropes. We will fasten them above the other, one shoulder high and another half. And holding these, the strangers should be able to cross with care." When his slender bridge had been made, the company passed over. Some cautiously and slowly, others more easily. Of the hobbits, Pippin proved the best, for he was sure-footed and he walked over quickly, holding only with one hand. But he kept his eyes on the bank ahead and did not look down. Sam shuffled along, clutching hard and looking down into the pale, eddying water as if it was a chasm in the mountains. He breathed with relief when he was safely across. "Live and learn," as my gaffer used to say, though he was thinking of gardening, not of roosting like a bird, nor of trying to walk like a spider. Not even my Uncle Andy ever did a trick like that. When at length all the company was gathered on the east bank of the Silverlode, the elves untied the ropes and coiled 2 of them. Rumil, who had remained on the other side, drew back the last one, slung it on his shoulder, and with a wave of his hand went away back to Nimrodel to keep watch. "Now, friends," said Haldir, "you have entered the Nath of Lorien, or the Gore, as you would say, for it is the land that lies like a spearhead between the arms of Silverlode and Anduin the Great. We allow no strangers to spy out the secrets of the Nath. Few, indeed, are permitted even to set foot there. As was agreed, I shall here blindfold the eyes of Gimli the Dwarf. The others may walk free for a while until we come nearer to our dwellings down in Egladil, in the angle between the waters." Uh-oh, what's going to happen? This was not at all to the liking of Gimli. "The agreement was made without my consent," he said. "I will not walk blindfold like a beggar or a prisoner. I am no spy. My folk have never had dealings with any of the servants of the enemy. Neither have we done harm to the elves. I am no more likely to betray you than Legolas or any other of my companions." "I do not doubt you," said Haldir, "yet this is our law. I am not the master of the law. I cannot set it aside. I have done much in letting you set foot over the Celebrant." Gimli was obstinate. He planted his feet firmly apart and laid his hand upon the haft of his axe. "I will go forward free," he said, "or I will go back and seek my own land where I am known to be true of word, though I perish alone in the wilderness." "You cannot go back," said Haldir sternly. "Now you have come thus far, you must be brought before the Lord and the Lady. They shall judge you, to hold you, or to give you leave as they will. You cannot cross the rivers again, and behind you there are now secret sentinels that you cannot pass. You would be slain before you saw them." Gimli drew his axe from his belt. Haldir and his companion bent their bows. "A plague on dwarves and their stiff necks," said Legolas. "Come," said Aragorn. "If I am still to lead this company, you must do as I bid. It is hard upon the dwarf to be thus singled out. We will all be blindfold, even Legolas. That will be best, though it will make the journey slow and dull." Gimli laughed suddenly. "Ha ha! A merry troop of fools we shall look. Will Haldir lead us all on a string like many blind beggars with one dog? But I will be content if only Legolas here shares my blindness." "I am an elf and a kinsman here," said Legolas, becoming angry in his turn. "Now let us cry a plague on the stiff necks of elves," said Aragorn. but the company shall all fare alike. Come, bind our eyes, Haldir. I shall claim full amends for every fall and stubbed toe if you do not lead us well, said Gimli, as they bound a cloth about his eyes. You will have no claim, said Haldir. I shall lead you well, and the paths are smooth and straight. Alas for the folly of these days, said Legolas. Here all are enemies of the one enemy, and yet I must walk blind, while the sun is merry in the woodland under the leaves of gold. Folly it may seem, said Haldir. Indeed, in nothing is the power of the Dark Lord more clearly shown than in the estrangement that divides all those who still oppose him. Whoa! What a powerful line!
Mm-hmm.
Indeed, in nothing is the power of the Dark Lord more clearly shown than in the estrangement that divides all those who still oppose him. Wow. What does that say about divisions amongst people, especially in our nation? I don't want to carry on. I don't want to get too deep into that. But I think that Tolkien put this line here for a very specific reason, to get a very specific point across. We're all fighting the same evil. We're all fighting against the same enemy, and yet we're bickering and fighting amongst each other. And that's a tool of the enemy. That's a powerful tool of the enemy. Carrying on. Yet so little faith and trust do we find now in the world beyond Lothlorien, unless maybe in Rivendell, that we dare not by our own trust endanger our land. We live now upon an island amid many perils, and our hands are more often upon the bowstring than upon the harp. The rivers long defended us, but they are a sure guard no more. For the shadow has crept northward all about us. Some speak of departing, yet for that it already seems too late. The mountains to the west are growing evil. To the east the lands are waste and full of Sauron's creatures, and it is rumored that we cannot now safely pass southward through Rohan, and the mouths of the great river are watched by the enemy. Even if we could come to the shores of the sea, we should find no longer any shelter there. It is said that there are still havens of the high elves, but they are far north and west beyond the land of the halflings. But where that may be, though the Lord and Lady may know, I do not. You ought at least to guess, since you have seen us, said Merry. There are elf havens west of my land, the Shire where the hobbits live. Happy folk are hobbits to dwell near the shores of the sea, said Haldir. It is long indeed since any of my folk have looked on it. Yet still we remember it in song. Tell me of these havens as we walk. I cannot, said Merry. I have never seen them. I've never been out of my own land before, and if I had known what the world outside was like, I don't think I should have had the heart to leave it. That also goes back to our first episode concerning hobbits. One of the points that we made in that was that the hobbits were holed up. No pun intended. They were in their little haven and refused to go out and bring light to this dark world. Now, Merry, he wasn't forced to go. He went on his own accord, but he did not realize what he was getting into. And so now it's this constant regret, this constant second guessing himself, this constant longing to go home.
I wouldn't necessarily say it's regret. Because I'm sure he doesn't regret going to help his friend.
Yeah, that was too strong of a word.
Yeah, I don't know really what word would best describe it, so maybe...
Trepidation or just the unease. Maybe just more of a grass is greener on the other side. What if, just those types of things. Yeah, perhaps regret is too strong of a word. Listeners, you let us know what you think about that. Well, anyway, I cannot, said Mary. I have never seen them. I have never been out of my own land before, and if I had known what the world outside was like, I don't think I should have had the heart to leave it. Not even to see the fair Lothlorien? Said Haldir. The world is indeed full of peril, and in it there are many dark places, but still there is much that is fair. And though in all lands love is now mingled with grief, it grows perhaps the greater. Some there are among us who sing that the shadow will draw back and peace shall come again. Yet I do not believe that the world about us will ever again be as it was of old, or the light of the sun as it was aforetime. For the elves, I fear, it will prove at best a truce, in which they may pass to the sea unhindered and leave the Middle-earth forever. Alas for Lothlorien that I love. It will be a poor life in a land where no Malorn grew. But if there are 1,000,000 Malorn trees beyond the great sea, none have reported it. As they spoke thus, the company filed slowly along the paths in the wood, led by Haldir, while the other elf walked behind. They felt the ground beneath their feet smooth and soft, and after a while they walked more freely, without fear of hurt or fall. Being deprived of sight, Frodo found his hearing and other senses sharpened. He could smell the trees and the trodden grass. He could hear many different notes in the rustle of the leaves overhead, the river murmuring away on his right, and the thin, clear voices of birds high in the sky. He felt the sun upon his face and hands when they passed through an open glade.
Do you know what I want?
What do you want?
I want... we got the radio versions of the books where they add sound effects.
The BBC,
and stuff.
Yes.
I want my audiobook with sound effects appropriate to what the characters are hearing.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's very, I want everything. But
Yeah.
just a thought I had.
Good thought. I would like that too. Now, where was I? Here we go. As soon as he set foot upon the fair bank of Silverlode, a strange feeling had come upon him, and it deepened as he walked into the Nath. It seemed to him that he had stepped over a bridge of time into a corner of the elder days, and was now walking in a world that was no more. Okay, stop. What kind of descriptions, Micah? What are we supposed to make of Lothlorien? We haven't even gotten to the, to the main city where Galadriel and Celeborn are. What are you picturing in your mind as you're reading all of these descriptions?
You mean of Lothlorien itself, or? I often find it very hard to describe in my own words, because I think Tolkien's words are the best description for it.
What has he described so far? Not the words that he used, but what is he describing every time they're talking about Lothlorien?
Ancient.
The elder days, the way things were, right? Before the dark days. Pristine. Maybe a garden of Eden.
Unblemished.
Right. Maybe it is a picture of the abode of Iluvatar. Maybe it is a picture of a temple. Those are some deep things, too deep for us to go in to on this episode, but just some thoughts from me. Lothlorien is nothing like anywhere else in Middle-earth. It is going back in time. That's what it seemed to Frodo that he had stepped over a bridge of time into a corner of the elder days and was now walking in a world that was no more. In Rivendell, there was a memory of ancient things. In Lorien, the ancient things still lived on in the waking world. Evil had been seen and heard there. Sorrow had been known. The elves feared and distrusted the world outside. Wolves were howling on the wood's borders, but on the land of Lorien, no shadow lay.
It is actually, in some ways, quite like the Shire in that they're both very isolated corners of the world where no evil has come, at least for a long while.
Great point.
And like when it compares to Rivendell, it's like there's the memory of ancient things, but Rivendell has, opened its borders to say. I guess if maybe
they're positioned in a place where they are affected by perhaps a good thing to say about Rivendell is where lore lives.
Yeah.
Okay, you have Elrond. Okay, he's the lore master. He is the lore master. Here you have the realm of his mother-in-law, and here is song, music, the poetry of the elder days.
Yeah, lore being played out,
right?
Instead of just being in a book.
And you have to remember the beauty of this. You go all the way back to the elder days. You go back to the days of the trees, and you have the Valar coming over to bring the high elves, the Eldar, to the Undying Lands, to Valinor, right? And say, come and live with us. And a bunch of them went, but a bunch stayed. As they're all, we'll make it there. We're moving. We're going along, right? And they just stop and stay, and they're so enamored by the beauty of the woods and everything that let's just set up camp here and just rest for a little bit. Okay, boom, there goes 1,000 years. You guys ready to move a little bit? Yeah, we'll go. They go another 10 feet or so. Let's stay here for a while. It's so beautiful. Well, here you have these elves in Lothlorien, and they're talking. Haldir keeps talking. Perhaps one day we'll be able to go to the harbors in the west and set sail for the Undying Lands. They're in no hurry to do this. It's still...
Yeah, and there's so many different branching topics of discussion around this, but that's very... it's a big contrast to what we've seen with the other elves of Middle-earth. The elves who have been more exposed to the growing darkness, and the elves that we first meet when the hobbits are leaving the Shire, they're on their way.
And there's a sorrow. There's a veil of sorrow on them.
And they long for the sea.
Yes.
And later on we'll see, I don't know if this is spoilers, I don't really think it is, but when Legolas sees the sea, then he also has a growing or an overpowering desire to
he hears
leave.
The music of Ulmo and his Maiar.
So I think the isolation of Lothlorien has maybe made them not realize what they're missing, or
well, it's a haven, and I'm telling you, to me it's a picture of a temple. A temple, it's a relationship between. This is where the presence of Iluvatar is really here. It's really protecting them. I don't know, what all the lore is involved in that. We'll find out later on as we continue on here. All that day, the company marched on until they felt the cool evening come and heard the early night wind whispering among many leaves. Remember, they are still blindfolded. Then they rested and slept without fear upon the ground, for their guides would not permit them to unbind their eyes, and they could not climb. In the morning they went on again, walking without haste. At noon they halted, and Frodo was aware that they had passed out under the shining sun. Suddenly he heard the sound of many voices all around him. A marching host of elves had come up silently. They were hastening toward the northern borders to guard against any attack from Moria, and they brought news, some of which Haldir reported. The marauding orcs had been waylaid and almost all destroyed. The remnant had fled westward towards the mountain and were being pursued. A strange creature also had been seen, running with bent back and with hands near to the ground, like a beast, and yet not of beast shape. It had eluded capture, and they had not shot it, not knowing whether it was good or ill, and it had vanished down the Silverlode southward. Also, said Haldir, they bring me a message from the Lord and Lady of the Galathrim. You are all to walk free, even the dwarf Gimli. It seems that the lady knows who and what is each member of your company. New messages have come from Rivendell, perhaps. He removed the bandage first from Gimli's eyes. Your pardon. It's beautiful. Your pardon, he said, bowing low. Look on us now with friendly eyes. Look and be glad, for you are the first dwarf to behold the trees of the Nath of Lorien since Durin's days. I want to stop and talk about Gimli. When we backed up to get a running start for this section of this chapter, we talked about Gimli, and or we talked about Haldir discussing Gimli. He's untrusted. He's a dwarf. He's not supposed to be. I can't even allow it. Well, then Frodo chimes in for him. He's one of the company, and he's been true and faithful to the company, to our mission. Elrond picked him. He's sent by Elrond, and that's going to get their ears. Elrond is an incredibly important elf. When he speaks, everybody listens. Galadriel listens when Elrond speaks. And then that's when they come up with this thing. Okay, well, we'll blindfold him. He's going to have to be blindfolded. That's our law. I can't do anything about the law. And Gimli, what's his protest? I am a true dwarf. No evil could be laid to my account. Where I come from, everybody knows my character. Haldir says, we just have to do this. And of course, Aragorn, the great king, a great picture of Jesus, as we have said time and time again, says, hey, bind everybody's eyes. We're all for one and one for all. We are a fellowship, and we are in this together. Everybody gets their eyes bound. And now we get this word from the king and queen, right? They know you. They know who you are, and you, Gimli, are to walk free. I beg your pardon for this, for the last couple of days of this, please. And bowing, prostrating himself to this dwarf and saying, look on us with friendly eyes. Micah, what, okay, talk to me, son. Talk to me about this Gimli versus our beloved. We love John Rhys
let's
Davies.
preface this. We love him.
We love him as an actor. John Rhys Davies, one of my favorite actors.
Yeah, let's put it this way. We have a problem with how the character that he played was written. And I do like that version of Gimli, but it's not Gimli. It's a fun character, but it's not Gimli.
It's like Gimli reimagined.
Yeah, let's say that.
Yes. It's a cartoon Gimli.
Yeah. He's used as the butt of jokes. He's, the comedic relief, which you need that in movies.
You have to have that, yes, and he is excellent at that because the man is funny.
Yeah, but I'm still allowed to complain.
Yes.
So, Gimli is, the best word I can describe him as is noble. Every time I think of a dwarf, I think of like a medieval knight. They have codes. They're
the knight's code. Yes, chivalry.
And a lot of the characters in Tolkien's work are like that. They're all very, they have codes of ethic.
Honorable.
They're honorable. characters, and the dwarves are no exception whatsoever. And, to make him a character where he's, oh, I'm going to burp after I have
He's
a beer.
a clown.
Yeah.
He's a clown.
And because Gimli's one of my favorite characters, and I love the book version of Gimli, because he is
awesome.
true.
Yes, he's just awesome. I mean, you just use the word awesome. Okay. I've been talking about Lothlorien as a haven, as a garden, as a temple, as a place where the presence of Iluvatar, or the initial fingerprint of Iluvatar, we could say, is true. Remember, let me back up here, because people are going to say, well, the Valar created Arda, Middle-earth. Yes, they did, but only by knowing the song that Iluvatar gave them.
Through inspiration.
Yes, here's your blueprints. This is what, when they were singing it and having this vision, they said, that's what we want. Well, they could only have that if they had that part of the song from Iluvatar. So ultimately speaking, it's Iluvatar's song. It's his party, okay? And so a haven, a garden, an Eden, a tabernacle, a temple of Iluvatar. We're going to go back to Psalm 15. And man, Micah, listen very closely as I read this. I'm going to read it out of the New Revised Standard Version. And tell me if you can detect Gimli in here.
All right.
Psalm 15, a psalm of David. O Lord, who may abide in your tent, and who may dwell on your holy hill? Those who walk blamelessly and do what is right, and speak the truth from their heart, who do not slander with their tongue and do no evil to their friends, nor take up a reproach against their neighbors, in whose eyes the wicked are despised, but who honor those who fear the Lord, who stand by their oath even to their hurt, who do not lend money at interest and do not take a bribe against the innocent. Those who do these things shall never be moved. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. Who may dwell in your tent, O Lord? Who may dwell on your holy hill? Those are the questions. Answer, those who walk blamelessly and do what is right. Gimli.
He certainly does, yeah.
And speak the truth from their heart. Gimli.
Mm-hmm.
Who do not slander with their tongue and do no evil to their friends. Gimli.
Mm-hmm.
Nor take up reproach against their neighbors. Gimli. In whose eyes the wicked are despised.
Yes.
Gimli. But who honor those who fear Yahweh or Iluvatar. Yes, Gimli. Who stand by their oath even to their, let me insert a word, their own hurt.
That's one of the biggest ones.
Yes.
Because he took an oath to be with the Fellowship, and we'll see later on.
Yes, we will see. Who stand by their oath even... That's honorable. That's honor. Who do not lend money at interest and do not take a bribe against the innocent. Those who do these things shall never be moved. Those who do these things shall abide in the Lord's tent. Those who do these things will dwell on the Lord's holy hill. Those who do these things will be permitted to pass without blindfold. Free. You are free to operate, Gimli, is what Lord Celebrant, or did I say that? What? That's Celebrant is a Celeborn.
Yeah,
sorry, Celebrant is a stream, and the Lady Galadriel. Okay, but that's not all. There's one more psalm that I want to do, and this is Psalm 1, and I know this one by heart out of the New American Standard Bible. Now that I said that I know it by heart, I'm sure to stumble over it. How blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, nor stand in the path of sinners, nor sit in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law he meditates day and night. And he will be like a tree firmly planted by streams of waters, which yields its fruit in its season, and its leaf does not wither. And in whatever he does, he will prosper. The wicked are not so, but they are like chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the assembly of the righteous, nor sinners. Therefore, see, I did goof it up. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. That goes hand in hand with this psalm, Psalm 15 and Psalm 1. So, dear listeners, read those two psalms and think about Gimli in this section of the chapter Lothlorien. Micah, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you got it.
He is a great, great man, a dwarf.
Half a man.
An adopted child. No, he's just all dwarf, man. Adopted son of Eru Ilúvatar. And we all are adopted sons of Yahweh. When his eyes were in turn uncovered... Wait, how far are we from the end of the chapter, Micah?
We are a page and a half.
We'll make it.
Yes.
Okay. When his eyes were in turn uncovered, Frodo looked up and caught his breath. They were standing in an open space. To the left stood a great mound covered with a sward of grass as green as springtime in the elder days. Upon it, as a double crown, grew two circles of trees. The outer had bark of snowy white, and were leafless but beautiful in their shapely nakedness. The inner were malorn trees of great height, still arrayed in pale gold. High amid the branches of a towering tree that stood in the center of all, there gleamed a white flet. At the feet of the trees, and all about the green hillsides, the grass was studded with small golden flowers shaped like stars. Among them, nodding on slender stalks, were other flowers, white and palest green. They glimmered as a mist amid the rich hue of the grass. Over all the sky was blue, and the sun of afternoon glowed upon the hill and cast long green shadows beneath the trees. Behold, you are come to Cairn Amroth. Ooh, Amroth! That was Nimrdel's beloved. You have come to Cairn Amroth, said Haldir, for this is the heart of the ancient realm as it was long ago, and there is the mound of Amroth, where in happier days his high house was built. Here ever bloom the white flowers in the unfading grass, the yellow Eleanor and the pale Nifredil. Here we will stay a while and come to the city of the Galathrim at dusk. The others cast themselves down upon the fragrant grass, but Frodo stood a while, still lost in wonder. It seemed to him that he had stepped through a high window that looked on a vanished world. A light was upon it for which his language had no name. We don't have a word in our language to describe this, is what Frodo's thinking. There is no word. All that he saw was shapely, but the shapes seemed at once clear-cut, as if they had been first conceived and drawn at the uncovering of his eyes, and ancient, as if they had endured forever. He saw no color but those he knew, gold and white and blue and green, but they were fresh and poignant, as if he had at that moment first perceived them and made for them names new and wonderful. In winter here, no heart could mourn for summer or for spring. No blemish or sickness or deformity could be seen in anything that grew upon the earth. On the land of Lorien, there was no stain. Goes back to my description, Micah.
Mm-hmm. Unblemished.
This is an Eden. He turned and saw that Sam was now standing beside him, looking round with a puzzled expression and rubbing his eyes as if he was not sure that he was awake. "It's sunlight and bright day, right enough," he said. "I thought that elves were all for moon and stars, but this is more elvish than anything I've ever heard tell of. I feel as if I was inside a song, if you take my meaning." Sam has a way with words, and then he always excuses himself.
If you take my meaning.
Yeah. Haldir looked at them, and he seemed indeed to take the meaning of both thought and word. He smiled. "You feel the power of the Lady of the Galathrim," he said. "Would it please you to climb with me up Cairn Amrath?" They followed him as he stepped lightly up the grass-clad slopes. Though he walked and breathed, and about him living leaves and flowers were stirred by the same cool wind as fanned his face, Frodo felt that he was in a timeless land that did not fade or change or fall into forgetfulness. I've goofed that up. Forgetfulness. When he had gone and passed again into the outer world, still Frodo, the wanderer from the Shire, would walk there, upon the grass among Elenor and Nifredil in fair Lothlorien. They entered the circle of white trees. As they did so, the south wind blew upon Cairn Amroth and sighed among the branches. Frodo stood still, hearing far off great seas upon branches that had long ago been washed away, and seabirds crying whose race had perished from the earth. Haldir had gone on and was now climbing to the high flet. As Frodo prepared to follow him, he laid his hand upon the tree beside the ladder. Never before had he been so suddenly and so keenly aware of the feel and texture of a tree's skin and of the life within it. He felt a delight in wood and the touch of it, neither as forester nor as carpenter. It was the delight of the living tree itself. As he stepped out at last upon the lofty platform, Haldir took his hand and turned him towards the south. "Look this way first," he said. Frodo looked and saw, still at some distance, a hill of many mighty trees, or a city of green towers. Which it was, he could not tell. Out of it, it seemed to him that the power and light came that held all the land in sway. He longed suddenly to fly like a bird, to rest in the green city. Then he looked eastward and saw all the land of Lorien running down to the pale gleam of Anduin, the great river. He lifted his eyes across the river, and all the light went out, and he was back again in the world he knew. Beyond the river, the land appeared flat and empty, formless and vague, until far away it rose again, like a wall, dark and drear. The sun that lay on Lothlorien had no power to enlighten the shadow of that distant height. "There lies the fastness of southern Mirkwood," said Haldir. "It is clad in a forest of dark fir, where the trees strive one against another, and their branches rot and wither. In the midst upon the stony height stands Dol Guldur, where long the hidden enemy had his dwelling." Micah, remember when you first entered Mirkwood in Lord of the Rings Online?
Mm-hmm.
And you were disappointed?
Yeah.
Why were you disappointed?
Because it wasn't Mirkwood. That's the best way I can put it. It's open and just, I mean...
You don't think that it comports to this description?
Well, it does in certain ways. The trees are dead You know, it looks very corrupt.
Yeah.
And
or corrupted.
But you know, I just have well, I won't get into it big time, but yeah, I'm often disappointed because I won't criticize too harshly, because oftentimes it's just my vision of it doesn't match up with what someone else thought of it.
Right.
So.
Right. Understood. Okay. Okay. In the midst upon the stony height stands Dol Guldur, where long the hidden enemy had his dwelling. We fear that now it is inhabited again, and with power sevenfold. A black cloud lies over it of late. In this high place you may see the two powers that are opposed to one another, and ever they strive now in thought. But whereas the light perceives the very heart of the darkness, its own secret has not been discovered. Not yet. He turned and climbed swiftly down, and they followed him. Let me read that line again so we can understand. In this high place you may see the two powers that are opposed to one another. The darkness of Dol Guldur and Mirkwood, right, is one. And the light of Lothlorien is the other. And ever they strive now in thought. But whereas the light, Lothlorien, perceives the very heart of the darkness, Mirkwood, Dol Guldur, its own secret, whose own secret? Lothlorien, the light's own secret, has not been discovered. Think I'm understanding that properly?
Mm-hmm.
He turned and climbed swiftly down, and they followed him. At the hill's foot, Frodo found Aragorn, standing still and silent as a tree. But in his hand was a small golden bloom of Elenor, and a light was in his eyes. He was wrapped in some fair memory, and as Frodo looked at him, he knew that he beheld things as they once had been in this same place. For the grim years were removed from the face of Aragorn, and he seemed clothed in white, a young lord tall and fair, and he spoke words in the Elvish tongue to one whom Frodo could not see. Arwen Venemelda Namari, he said, and then he drew a breath, and returning out of his thought, he looked at Frodo and smiled. Here is the heart of elvendom on earth, he said, and here my heart dwells ever, unless there be a light beyond the dark roads that we still must tread, you and I. Come with me. And taking Frodo's hand in his, he left the hill of Ciaran Amroth and came there, never again, as a living man.
You need say no more. We'd best get a move on. There are still goblins about.
Oh, bother. More mountains?
No, don't you see? The sun is setting in the west, behind the mountains. We're on the other side, to the edge of the land beyond.
Mike, I feel that we rushed too quickly through the chapter.
Well, that's unavoidable, because there's so much to explore in every single page, every single sentence.
Yes. But this ending with Aragorn.
Yeah, we'll definitely get more into him later, though.
Yeah. I just want to remember and keep in mind this flower that he's holding is called Elenor. Let's remember that for when we get closer to the end of the book. Okay. And the impact that this visit is going to make on all of these individuals, right? But I'm particularly thinking of one right now.
Mm-hmm.
Mike, anything that you need to add to any of that? Any of our thoughts on Gimli? Anything?
Don't believe so.
No? All right. Well, then it is time to carry on. I think that we have some...
What on earth are these?
Replies to the party invitations.
Good gracious.
Yes. Good gracious, we do have a reply to the party invitation. This was left on our Facebook page by Andrew Weber. Says, greetings from a far away place. And I tried writing you an email, but this is technical stuff, but it kept getting pinged back. You might want to check that out. I did check it out, and then I got that fixed, and then something far worse happened.
Oh, great.
We'll talk about that in just a moment. He says, I don't know why it's taken me so long to send you guys a message. I've been listening a long time and really enjoy the show. Let me zoom this in for my old man eyes, shall we? All right. And put this over here.
I think you mean put on your spectacles, because we don't use computers, right? We're
Oh,
sitting
yes. Sorry. I've been listening a long time and really enjoy the show. I'm a big Tolkien fan. It was a total hoot to find out early on. Let me try that again. It was a total hoot to find out early on you were a Christian homeschool dad of 6. And maybe I have, this is me talking, maybe I've misrepresented my family. I have a family of 6. I have 4 kids, four kids that are all have been homeschooled or are in the process of still being homeschooled. 2 graduated, 2 have not. He says, I'm the same, but of 7. So I feel inadequate. I feel so inadequate. And then to discover your show was coming from Manchester, Tennessee. I'm writing to you all the way from, drumroll please, Murfreesboro, Tennessee.
Wow.
Yes.
A whole long way away.
That's our nearest major city. Let's see here. In addition to listening to the show, I've allowed you to talk me into playing Lotro again.
Nice.
My wife wants me to tell you thanks a lot. I used to play years ago, and his main character's name is Veronway. Anyway, carrying on about the latest episode. And I just scrolled right past it. Come on. We'll do this. About the latest episode, I haven't been to Lorien in Lotro, but I didn't care for the way it was portrayed in the movie. Reading the book, the impression I got was of a place that was absolutely ideal, but also absolutely natural. What could be achieved when corruption can be kept out? It puts me in mind of the Garden of Eden. Hey, we're simpatico there. If we could somehow go back, I think we would be blown away by the beauty of it, but it wouldn't be strange. Lothlorien, I'm thinking specifically comes specifically about Caris Galathan in the movie, comes across as alien and not not a little creepy.
I am in complete agreement with that. Lorien is natural, and the best way is to describe it as ideal, because it's not above ideal. It's not like something from the movie Avatar.
It doesn't transcend.
Yeah, it's within our
reason?
Knowledge, but perfect.
Yes. We can understand.
Yes.
And that's really, Tolkien is writing words that he understands, and it conveys this thing. And so when he says that it seems, it comes across as alien and just, a little bit creepy.
Yeah.
Okay. He says, of course, that's just my 2 cents. About Amazon's upcoming Middle-earth show. I'm very pessimistic about it. I don't have any rationale for that feeling except our current entertainment culture. My fear is they will present us with a TV/MA bloodbath with naked, cavorting elves on a quest for social justice. Mike and I also are wary.
Yes, very.
Okay, I have never in my life seen Game of Thrones. And the reason why, I remember when it first came out, and I was back then part of an entity called Middle-earth Network, and that was a fun suite of websites that we had, and I ran the radio station for that. We had a 24/7 Middle-earth radio station, and we did podcasts, and we had a social networking site, and all these wonderful things. Well, I remember when that came out, and there was just all kinds of excitement about Game of Thrones. And then I heard one person say, it's nothing more than softcore porn, in a cool setting. right? And you got thrones and dragons and sword battles and things, but that's just a wrapper for softcore porn, and I think that Andrew brings a very valid concern. So I'd like to hear from other listeners to the Secret Fire podcast. You know that we're a Christian show. That's what this is all about. Do you have those same types of concerns as Andrew and Micah and I? What are your thoughts? Are there enough people that would... I'm wondering if Tolkien fans are a smaller group than Lord of the Rings fans. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, most certainly. Absolutely, I would say they're...
Tolkien fans, admirers of the professor, of J.R.R. Tolkien, make up a smaller group than fans of the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit.
Corporate.
Yes, right.
Yeah.
And I do know that many people that are, quote, I'm using bunny ears here, that are huge fans of the Lord of the Rings that actually have never read the books.
Movies.
Yes, they've never read the books. Anyway, I agree with you, Andrew. Great thoughts. Thank you for contacting us on that. We didn't get any other feedback other than, well, of course, we always get small messages and things from Twitter and Facebook and things like that, and we appreciate all of that stuff. So we'll give you all the ways to contact us here in just a moment when we send out more party invitations. But first, it's time for our party tree segment, Micah. Woo! And boy, do we have some fantastic news this week. Last week, I blew up our website.
Oh, good job.
Completely destroyed it. And right now, if you are watching on the video, you will see a scene from the Lord of the Rings that I encountered last week. And that was, here I come. I mentioned last episode, I don't like running websites. I have no business in the back end tweaking on websites. I create content. That's what I do. And so it's already a dangerous place for me to be when I go on the back end of the website to do something, tweak some code here, do something there. And I thought I got our email problems taken care of, but here comes this big old Balrog. Okay, my last time back there, I go in because I was going to upload a picture that I was going to share with all of our fellowship members, and lo and behold, the website isn't there. And not just Secret Fire Podcast, all of our websites, GCT Network, Secret Fire Podcast, the Theonauts website, they are gone. And so I'm not exactly sure what I did, but I was waylaid by a Balrog.
I'm not even sure how something like that would happen, but I've never even dabbled with websites, so
it's no fun. But we have to run on a WordPress platform. It needs to be a self-hosted WordPress site for certain plugins that I need to have, especially for the podcast. Well, here's the consequences of those websites being lost. Over 5 years of work, okay, all kinds of blogs and articles, and of course all of the podcasts, hundreds of podcasts, and so because the website was gone, then the feed for the podcasts were gone. Okay, and that means that the next time that iTunes or Google Podcasts or Stitcher Radio or TuneIn Radio goes and crawls our feed to see if there's any new episodes, it will see that there are, in fact, none to be found. There's no feed, and then it will purge it from the system. Right now, Frodo's saying, "No!" as Gandalf fell. Okay? That's what's going on the video. If you want to see that and you're a podcast listener, get over to our YouTube channel. Just search for Secret Fire Podcast on YouTube. Regardless, or getting back to the story, I was able to go and into my podcast app before it got crawled, the feed got crawled, and before everybody figures out, hey, there's nothing there, and I was able to copy all the text for all of Secret Fire Podcast and the last 100 episodes of our other podcast, Finding Christ in Cinema. And so I will be able to recreate those, and I will update the posts to be when the original release date. But here's the heads up for you Fellowship members. Your podcast app, you're going to start seeing all the way back from episode 0. You're going to start seeing it pop up in your podcast app again. Now, you either just go in there and delete it or take this opportunity to start over again and listen to what we have said in the past. And so that's really my well-mannered frivolity. That was fun.
I have no words to add into that, so.
But I would like everybody else also that are watching on the video to see.
Oh, no, boy.
What is it?
I'm not going to say. You say.
I have my Hobbit feet on for this show. So, hey, the call is still out there for anybody that has, even a very minimal amount of time to dedicate, to donate to running the Secret Fire Podcast website on the back end. It's the GCT Network website. If you're a genius on that kind of stuff and you will not nuke the websites, please, I want to talk with you.
That's one big requirement, is that you don't
you do not nuke the websites.
And Dad filled that requirement.
Yes, I did. So anything from you, Micah? Any updates? Anything going on that's fun?
Not really.
No? Well, what are we going to talk about next time? We just finished a chapter. The very next chapter is The Mirror of Galadriel.
Ooh.
Moving on, chapter 6 of book 2. Hey, but before we go, we need to send out some party invitations for y'all. The Secret Fire Podcast is live in the GCT Network studio whenever we are actually live. We have just done 2 shows in a row. Well, every other week. That's what we're shooting for, every other week here. We'll send out notifications when we're broadcasting on our Twitch page.
And the best way to get notified when we're live in the studio is via Twitter, @SecretFireCast. And you can join us on the Arkenstone server in Lord of the Rings Online at lotro.com.
Yes, you can send email to us because it works now at secretfire@gctnetwork.com. You can also call us on the Hobbit hotline at 507-407-GCTN. That's 507-407-4286. Fatty Bulger is standing by at Crick Hall. Well, let's make sure. Hey, Fatty! He's always standing by.
He says hello, Elias.
He's a hobbit. He's always standing by. You can subscribe to Secret Fire Podcast in any of your podcast apps. I was able to update that feed, so they shouldn't even realize that something bad had happened. So go into Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, TuneIn Radio, or your favorite podcatcher. Search them all for Secret Fire Podcast. Our theme song, Hobbit's Dance, is from the album Memories of Middle-earth by Brobdingnagian Bards. Find out more about them and buy all the music on their website at thebards.net. To find out more about the Secret Fire Podcast, as well as our other shows, including Finding Christ in Cinema and the Theonauts, visit our main website at gctnetwork.com, which is currently under construction. It's up there, but it is sparse. We'll
Maintenance.
get that. Yes. Now, if you like the Secret Fire Podcast, please share it with your friends and also review the show in iTunes. That helps people discover it. If you love the Secret Fire Podcast, please consider becoming a patron and sustaining member of the fellowship on our Patreon page at patreon.com/GCTN. And until next time,
I regret to announce this is the end. I'm going now. I bid you all a very fond farewell.
Goodbye. It was tied to
Did we say flat last time?
Yes.
Did we say Malorn tree?
A Malorn tree!
There.
Yeah, there we go. That's going to be a long episode, but we had to get through that chapter, I do believe. Everyone who is watching on our Twitch page, we do appreciate you joining us. Again, I will upload this to our YouTube channel. So you can go to YouTube and search for Secret Fire Podcast, and then that way you'll be able to watch this over again or catch it from the beginning if you came in a little bit late. and all that good stuff. Give us a thumbs up on YouTube. You know, all that stuff that everybody says. Click subscribe.
Hit the bell
icon, and you'll be notified every time we upload a new video. Everybody knows that stuff, and yet everybody that does videos says the same exact thing.
Yeah.
YouTube people are YouTube folk. I mean, they watch YouTube. And I just recently have turned into a YouTube folk.
Oh, really?
Yes. Well, within the last couple of years. I've always been an audio guy.
Yeah.
Okay? And so I listen to music, I listen to audiobooks, I listen to podcasts.
Well, guess what I do on YouTube?
Listen to podcasts.
And audiobooks.
Yes. Well, you know, for a long time now, I'm one of those folks that believe that social media is just a cesspool of cess.
Full of cess.
It is, and so I'm trying to, you know, stay away from the cesspoolier places, the deeper parts of the cesspool. And if I go on YouTube, I can watch what I want to watch, and I don't have to look at the comments. Although often I find myself doing
don't do it.
I know,
Just don't do it.
I know it.
I never do.
Anyway.
I'm blind to the world.
So again, everybody, thank you for watching, and we will see you. Iluvatar Willen and the Bruin and Don't Rise will be back in 2 weeks with Chapter 6 of Book 2 of The Lord of the Rings.